My background obviously was military, and I worked at a really high level in the special forces. I've been fascinated by potential. How does somebody perform at the highest levels when it matters the most?
Is there something that actually we can get our teeth into that's really going to help people? Because I think that's what I should be about. I'm a psychologist trying to help people.
I mean, let's be clear, AI is not a human being. I don't see it ever replicating human beings at all.
But the thing is, it doesn't matter how fast you are unless you've got a sense of purpose and meaning. So it doesn't matter what information you've got unless it's directing towards something.
What you're describing is an augmented AI capability, being very precise with the individual, personalised, using AI which wasn't possible before.
That's the difference. It's where this is now becoming very specific for you, and that's where I think AI done well takes you to a different level.
This week on GAEA Talks, Floyd Woodrow, Malcolm Frame. Great to have you both back.
Graham, it's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So we hear a lot about AGI is coming and all the incredible capabilities of artificial intelligence. You both are subject matter experts, psychology, and how would you describe yourself?
I think in this area, it's probably going to be as a performance coach, mentor, leadership coach would probably be where I would fit.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good coverage. You're probably far more than just that as well, but we can get into that.
Yeah, perfect.
But I think, given we're talking about artificial intelligence, AI, what do you think is missing between what people believe the future of AI is and the actual capability of human beings? How big is the gap, and how are you two addressing solving that?
The gap is substantial. I mean, let's be clear. AI is not a human being. I don't see it ever replicating human beings at all. I think what it can give us is some phenomenal tools to enhance who we are as human beings. And I think that's probably a good thing just to define is what is a human being. And for me, what I think I've seen now, and we can go right the way back to ancient wisdom, right the way through philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, is that human beings have meaning. They have something that drives them. They have a purpose. Something allows them to grow. And I think human beings have the best journey when they're growing. I think human beings need to have a strategy, facts, figures, detail, analysis, critical thinking to plan and to connect themselves to that vision, that meaning. They've got to have social connection. They've got to have values and character, and realize that is probably one of the biggest drivers of human beings, is our ability to work together as a tribe. And they've got to be resilient. So that warrior spirit, which I term under a compass, part of the program that we're running with Enlightened and backed by AI, means for me it's a collaboration. AI is there at this moment in time to support what we're doing, to enable us to be more innovative, creative, to think faster. And Malcolm and I have been working on a project called Enlighten, where that's what we're seeing. With the AI tools that we're using, it helps us coach better, understand people in a better way, understand people to understand themselves from the start point, and probably to become more human, to be more consciously aware. So I see that collaboration as being significant, but I don't see a replication of human beings. I think we're way away from that at the moment. I'd love to see how it would develop, and I do think AI can again come close to it, but will it replicate human beings? It won't do.
So in order to understand that gap, what you're describing is an augmented AI capability. So enhancing the capabilities or solving problems on scale, yet being very precise with the individual, personalized, using AI which wasn't possible before. I mean, Malcolm, what's your interpretation?
Yeah, I think the key word there for me is to problem solve, and I think actually that's a very human thing. I think actually that's what we're almost designed to do. You know, we come into a world that's it's got massive uncertainties. It's detailed, it's complex. There's things that are happening that we can't really plan for. And the human system has been really to be developed to deal with that, to try and problem solve that, in many ways. But that leads to a whole load of layers of complexity that I don't think AI is quite at an understanding, because you're talking about physiology, you're talking about the psychology, the movement, the physiology of the movement, everything trying to come together in a very, very defined package of how it moves through the world. Where I do think AI is really helping, though, is helping us to understand that complexity and break down that complexity into actually an easier way of understanding how the human being is within the environment. So do I actually think it's there? No, I think it's a good bit off, because you're talking about those real subtle human nuances that a living thing actually has. That felt sense of something, which I don't think AI can actually deal with at this moment in time, because the felt sense is the thing that's missing. But I think what it really does allow us to do, and I think Floyd said it very eloquent there, it allows us to help understand that complexity, to help people in very simple ways, in very simple terms, breaking that down in a very clear message of how we can help. And really, that's what the whole enlightened. I mean, if you go way back in history with the whole idea of the Enlightenment movement, it was about helping people to understand their psychological self, that awareness of creation of meaning within that environment. Now, that's what I think we're on the cusp of, and that's what we've really been working hard. And I think that then really needs to address some of the key human factors within that AI development. Whereas I feel sometimes the AI development is, I don't know where it's coming from, is it's California Press, California Research. Sorry, I'm a bit harsh with the Californians maybe, but actually it's, we don't know what's really driving that mechanism. And I think we really need to get the mechanism right and understanding how humans operate within a world. And the closer we can use that information and dilute that complexity down into very simple messages about how we can help, and then guide people through those simple messages, I think we can actually really help humans be better humans through AI. So I think it's the connection, and I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I think there's a big role, and I think that's what we've been really working hard on, is developing how can AI really take all that heavy lifting and support that human being actually to be more effective in that role.
There's a huge amount of unrealized potential through the application of AI
Mm.
into human development. And for a bit of context, for those who aren't aware of your background, why do you specifically care? What is it that you have done in the past which, without sounding blunt, qualifies you? What experience do you have as a human being within the roles that you've had throughout your life in understanding human beings in order to recognize what that human potential actually is that you would love to bring out in people? And then Malcolm, afterwards, yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been one of the pleasures of working with Malcolm on this, is that I've been fascinated by potential. How does somebody perform at the highest levels when it matters the most? But also I've been fortunate, since my background obviously was military, and I've worked at a really high level in the special forces, but I've been a businessman. I've got a number of different companies that I run. I've worked in high performance sports with some top teams in probably most sporting arenas. I've also worked in education, and I've worked again back with the military. During that entire process, what I've been looking at is, how do you get the best out of a human being? What are the key constructs that seem to run through all those individuals or teams or organizations that perform at the highest levels? And by performance, we're always going to perform, whether we get up in the morning and perform as a parent, whether we go into work as a colleague, or indeed we're running a business, we're in a sports field, we're in education. It's about, how can I turn up to be the best version of myself today, so that even on my worst day, I'm difficult to beat. And I look at it from that perspective. How can I just make sure that on this journey and environment, I understand myself? And so I talk about an inner compass. And what I've seen through all the people that I do see perform at a high level is that they're really aware of the 4 key areas. And I talk about a compass. North Pointer is a super North Star. It's about where they want to be in 3, 5, or 10 years. It is their meaning and purpose. And I get Malcolm to touch on it. We can go back through time. You can go through every single philosophy, culture. It will say the same thing. It's about that journey, you becoming the best version of yourself. It's about growth so that you can potentially give back to society. And again, you help the next generation. That's the legacy that we leave. It is about critical thinking, how we think under pressure. Performance is about making the right decisions, adapting to those decisions, understanding complexity. So you've got a directive strategy, but you've also got one where you can be flexible to seize opportunity. Massively important in today's arena. But they've got to tie together that super North Star and strategy. The East Cardinal's about values, about culture, about how we bring people together. And the West Cardinal's about resilience. For me, it's about unlocking that in individuals. When you can have that holistic framework inside you, and you can bounce between any of the areas, and one will ameliorate the other one, is you'll perform at a high level. And that really is about you being comfortable with yourself. And that's about conscious awareness. Why is this important to me? Is because I want human beings to be more consciously aware, to make better decisions. When you look at what's surrounding us on a political environment, I just look at people who are looking at the situation in front of them in an inappropriate way, where they're not looking at reality. They're creating their own reality. That is not factual. That's not what this world should be about. So therefore, the more you're aware, you're more comfortable, you'll make better decisions. You're not defined by the roles or the responsibilities that you have. It's the person that you are, the human being you have become. The environment in which we go into is just a training ground. What I've just explained to you, I've been through loads of different training grounds, environments where I've had to perform differently, different tactics, different awareness, different people I've needed to be with, just part of my journey, again, to become a better human being. The more that I think we can enhance people's awareness, coach them, give them mentors, bring them the tools, democratize education, that can only bode well for us as a race. And more importantly, the communities in which we're in. And hopefully, as you then take it forward, you're just giving people an opportunity to be the best version of themselves. And I think the relationship with science is super clear. Philosophy is super clear. Now with AI, we can bring those things together and literally show people. We can enable you to understand what your personality traits actually are, how you're going to perform on a given day, because we can look at your cognitive load. But now we can tie it in with these different areas of performance and say, where are you? Do you have a clear super North Star? How's your strategy? What type of values do you think you need? What characteristics do you need to be successful? How can we have the right team code of conduct? And more importantly, when this is under pressure, mentally, physically, socially, and emotionally, you're resilient. Get that in equilibrium. You're going to be in a great space, but you have to work on all the areas. What AI is showing us, now we've been researching it and putting it together in the Enlighten project, is it's giving us some phenomenal thoughts. And we've just been spent a whole day looking at different research, going, that ties in with this, that supports this. So everything we're doing, we can say, is absolutely backed by time. Actually go back through any area in time, it will say the same things. One of the areas will be critical to success. Bring them together, it's a force multiplication on another level. AI is absolutely in support of that.
So now moving to the science and also your background, because I love how you think, and obviously I'm into sport, Newcastle, as we all know.
So you said
We
sport.
won't hold that against you.
Wow. Recently, I will question that.
Yeah.
But your experience is very specific, merged with the science to deconstruct and understand what are the actual mechanisms
Yeah.
which can then be understood, and various forms of artificial intelligence applied to solve problems with accuracy, with scale, with speed. I mean, you go for it.
Yeah, can I just go back one stage, if that's okay? Because it was actually something Floyd was talking about. It's really funny. I guess the question always comes up in my head when I look at anything, who cares, right? So we've got to understand why we should care about what we're talking about. But Floyd talked about the through history time there. We've almost done a double loop. If you go back to Aristotle, Socrates, the Buddha, going way back in time, all this philosophy around meaning was very prevalent in that talk. Marcus Aurelius, all that deep philosophy. It was all about bringing meaning into your life. And then we got into the sciences. Sorry, I'm breaking this down very quickly, but we got into the science of the cognitive sciences, the personality. How could we actually measure personality? So we have like those sort of traditional views of what personality was. And then we got the sort of cybernetic view of personality. Wow, but aren't we all goal-setting, goal-striving systems? So you get a cybernetic view of the world. And now we've got a rise again of more like a phenomenology, like an enactive view of the world. And how does that affect personality? Now, what they're all leading to, because some people can argue in a day, and that's up to them, that's right and that's wrong, and actually they can't be together. I just go, I don't really care. Actually, is there measuring there? Is there something that actually we can get our teeth into that's really going to help people? Because I think that's what I should be about. I'm a psychologist trying to help people. And if there's some nuggets of gold within each of those statements, then they should all be helpful. And I think that's the circular path that we've been on. We're actually really taking that deep meaning, but really understanding how do people actually create that meaning within the process. Now, I don't think that matters whether if you're a sports star, because actually there's got to be a sense of meaning and purpose that's going to drive that system to achieve what it needs to do. I think Floyd alludes to, or it could be a parent. Every system's got a meaning and a purpose that it's driving to. It's how do I put those resources in place that are going to support me to be the best version of that. So one of the things that always struck me was about this perception and action coupling. I think we talked about it before. And for me, I think it's core to being a human being. We're constantly trying to read our environment, to act in our environment. And how we couple those together is actually the significance of how effective you are in your environment. Because if that coupling's not good or doesn't exist, then we're never going to get proper action in the world or proper perception in the world, because it's a constant iteration, right? It just keeps going around. But then you've got to overlay that with how does this system operate? So you can look at personality. And if I've got a particular personality, well, how am I engaging with the world? I could be slightly neurotic. Does that affect how I perceive the world and act in the world? I might be very conscientious. Does that affect how I perceive the world and act in the world? Well, of course it is. But it's also going to be added into as well, what also motivates me. Am I motivated by being part of a team? Am I motivated purely by extrinsic rewards or intrinsic rewards? Am I motivated by seeking some risk in life or avoiding risk? What is driving that personality to make the system? Now, what we're really getting to here is actually a very complex process. And I think that's where AI is really helping us to put that together. And that's why, I don't mind Floyd, but Floyd and I actually got together because actually we came from a very different way. So not a very different way, but we were just looking at a different layer of it, I guess. I was very scientific, going, right, okay, this is all about that embodied cognition and activism, phenomenology. I believe in that philosophy. And then I met Floyd going, well, it's just like this, isn't it? You just do this, and it's very simple steps. And I go, right, well, Floyd, we have to test that, though. We just can't just give that out. We've got to make sure, because that's the way I like to think about things, going, right, I think I said to you one day before, I won't say something unless I know the facts about that. And then the more we looked at it, the more we actually came together on that principle. There are some really key principles that fundamentally that are just innate within the system. And actually that system allows you to build energy, right? Because energy is fundamental to any system. If you do not have energy, then where are you going? You're going nowhere. So you've got to have that energy in the system. And one of the biggest sources of energy is sense of purpose, meaning, actually family, being surrounded by other people. That's part of the biggest energy drive you're actually going to get in the system. How do you deal with setbacks? That's another big issue in the system. So how do you overcome when things go wrong? Yeah. So there's just key principles that fundamentally are in that system. So that's why we started developing a key to the core process of human beings. It doesn't matter. You could be a top elite footballer. You're still operating on the same principle. You're trying to read the game, what's going on in this game. Yeah. And you're trying to make a decision based on the reality of what you read in the game. Yeah. And you're trying to adapt to the reality of that game with letting go of any preconceptions or denials or anything else, or any other noise in the system, to actually make a plan to act out. Right, that's what we're doing. I think, was it Darwin says it's not the most intelligent, it's the most adaptable, right? So adaptability is also, if not the most key principle, is right up there. It's about us being adaptable. Now, that's what we've been trying to work on. Really trying to work on the understanding of the key to human functioning is understand that, and if you look at, say, affective neuroscience, which goes way back, Jaak Panksepp, it's about how are we dealing with our environment? Well, we have a range of behaviors. We have different adaptable tones or networks that we can actually utilize. Now, it's how good are we applying those within a situation? There's no point in me, was there turning up to a bun fight with whatever the phrase goes. Right, you've got to turn up with the right tools for the context of the situation.
Well, I think this is where it gets really interesting, because let's put this into the context of business and why. So the element of your background is you've worked with, and you work with professional sports people, teams, clubs. So I believe you're with a Premier League club. Is that right?
I was, yes.
You were. So in the business context, we can all look at it and say we all want to be super, super good sports people. Not everyone naturally is, but from the business perspective, and then Floyd, you can give an example from a business perspective. If you can get your players working well, then ideally you can win more games, you can get more points. The higher you go up the league, the more prize money you'll get. If you can develop young talent, I mean, Chelsea are a good example for developing a lot of young talent, which actually homegrown talent in the Premier League, when you sell them, they tend to be sold for a load of money, which can fund new players, high value players. It's actually a part of business. Failure to address on an individual basis, to understand the individuals from a coaching perspective, from a player perspective, from a dynamics perspective, physical condition. You've said to me before, is a player likely to stretch themselves too far because their mentality is, oh, I'm just going to battle through it, and then end up with a serious hamstring injury or something to be out for a long time? Will players not have the care and attention that they need, so the club doesn't treat them right because they haven't quite got the personality? When you begin to apply this and say, instead of Premier League club, it's organization, and we can look at the school organization because it's important within education very much, but in business, any business where the team is operating in an optimal manner, addressing all of these things individually, that moves the needle. That's where, when we say why, who cares? And you look at the business perspective, which is the core driver, because this all sounds super nice, but why does anyone care? Why are they going to invest in technology, which is going to be to the benefit of all of their staff? In reality, things that are going to move the needle on the bottom line.
Mm.
And if you can demonstrably perform better, increase performance, deliver better results across the board, happier people, positive, good adoption of technology, enhancing people's capabilities. I mean, with our friend James McQuivey from Forrester, who was on, had said on a number of occasions, CFOs look at AI
Yeah.
in business and say, right, how many jobs can we cut? And it's not the approach to take for a sustainable, successful future. It's how can we get better results? I mean, the work we're doing in insurance, and that sounds highly boring compared to Premier League football. It's about, well, can you empower people with augmented capabilities to do 4 times the amount of work, possibly with less time, at a higher quality, providing better outcomes and for the customers, but also as a unit, as a team, as individuals. Therefore, everyone wins. It's a different approach. Now, what we're told with where AI is, and even beginning to touch on the topics here of the actual capabilities, there is a universe of actual work that is yet to be undertaken, some of which you've been working on in this project.
Mm.
But that experience of your lives and the team around you to understand what is the problem, how do we address it, and where is the value in actually applying artificial intelligence, and the multimodal aspect, from the sensory aspect, from a large language model aspect, from other components of technology, from vision, from RAG, aggregating, engineering actual problems that genuinely matter. I mean, Floyd, I know you actually do spend a lot of time traveling the country with children in underprivileged schools, applying from a very young age in a genuine, sincere manner. You're doing what you said you're talking about, and you're delivering and you're seeing results. It's not a PR thing. It's people wouldn't know that so much about you. Share some of that experience and
No, I mean,
how that the reality of application technology can benefit people.
the great thing is, because I work in every single environment you just mentioned there, where do I see the use of AI across all the different sectors? I think there's a lot of, I would always say to people, be really careful about jumping onto the bandwagon of AI. There are a lot of charlatans out there that are not going to improve it. It's not at the right state yet. So there's still a lot of work to do in this space to be super clear on what you're trying to do, and where AI will certainly enhance a lot of things, but don't think it's the be all and end all yet, because it certainly isn't. In terms of, let's say, education, the ability to have a good coach, to have mentors, to have people that you can ask advice on is not going to be there. We should democratize a lot of educational things, and make sure that children especially have the ability to connect with something that can enhance what they're doing. I travel all over the country, as you know. I've done tens of thousands of children, and sometimes I'm told that the kids don't have ambition, they don't want to have meaning in life, they're going down the wrong paths. It's just not true. The key is how you connect to them. Where can AI enhance this is just enabling us to connect to children in a much better way. I think they can speed up some thinking, some educational elements, and I think what the work that we're certainly doing will enhance some of those elements, because you'll be able to engage about the strategy that you're using, the values that you need, resilient strategies, and I think we can assist certainly teachers and parents with what I think matters in education, which is engagement. On all of this, what are we trying to do is engage people to become better themselves, understanding that when you're in a great space, when you have the right tools and capabilities, actually the environment that you're in will become far simpler. So that is about well-being, that is about resilience, but none of that will matter unless you have meaning. It's the same thing when we hear that people will go down We're just going to talk about values. We're going to just talk about strategy, or indeed just about purpose, or let's be resilient. They don't mean anything unless they're brought together. What AI is going to be able to do, and certainly the work that we've been doing, is show you why those things definitely connect. But they connect as an individual, but as a team and an organization. This is going to enable organizations to have a really good overview, if they want to use this effectively, of their recruitment, of making sure that where sometimes we want cognitive diversity, that's great, but how will these people fit into an environment? How can we maximize their well-being? Because we can see where they all are in terms of performance. And if they're all at fatigue, or they're in breakdown, or they're bored, then that enables you to come in and have strategies to assist that. You only need one person to be off work at a high level for a significant period of time, and that's going to hit your bottom line. What we're able to do, and what we've already proven, is the construct behind Enlighten, which is a Compass for Life program, has been working in all these areas and has transformed the dial on communication, decision making, in terms of reliability, awareness of team results, accountability. We've done that in every environment that we've operated in, and that is with children to the toughest business leaders and multinationals.
And the military as well.
And the military, I'm going back into the military, because it's about showing, that's about coaching and mentoring, giving people knowledge so that they can just tie all those things together, realize that that's why you do have values. It has meaning because it needs to be lived, that you have to be resilient to do that. But without meaning and being aligned together, none of that will work anyway. And that's backed by a good strategy.
Well, that's an interesting segue between information and knowledge. So if we look at what is the very common understanding of what AI is, and for the technical people out there, they'll say, well, AI isn't really a thing. There are transformer-based technology, there are neural networks, it's machine learning. But if we say the common psyche is ChatGPT and Gemini,
Yeah.
for example, the big large language models that you talk to. And one of the big risks, and perhaps one of the things we're seeing propagated, is people believing they understand things because they've got the information. But it's not really in the domain of knowledge because they don't understand it. Now, in reality, what you've been describing is that cognitive difference between the two, which may on the surface, it's like having a great CV. You've got a great CV, but can you listen? Can you understand? Can you communicate? Or do you just know all this list of things that if question one would say that, if question two say that, how about a question which isn't on the list? Well, no, I don't know that one. But that's the human element that I think is the next step. The next step is to turn that information and have that engagement. Because like the internet, we could access billions and billions of bits of data.
Absolutely.
Yet people still look at the same 5 websites. Given we could access everything, we don't. Now it's in a more fluid way of communicating. But is that communication really human enough to have a positive impact? Or is it just, it's increased the amount of apparent information available without really becoming knowledge?
But you've got to come back to information and knowledge is, what's going to be useful today. So what changes the dial? So there's thousands, you can have tons of bit of information, but I'd look at it and go, none of that's going to make that person more effective. None of that's going to take you to another level. I went away to a group who were trying to select a group of people just through the evidence of these tests. So and all scientifically based. We're going to use these tests because we want to save money on all the people that come through and never pass this particular course. And we're going to make it complex and difficult so that we save money. This was actually a profession that I was particularly good at. So when I went there and looked at all of these different tests, and I was probably at the top of my game at that moment in time as well, I looked at them and thought, I don't think I'd pass these tests because they're totally inappropriate to what you're trying to do. They're not going to make a human being perform better because you've got that knowledge. That doesn't work that way. Just because I can read how to be fast does not mean I'm going to win the 100 meters. You've got to take the key elements to it to enable me to be quicker, to train better, to have the right diet, to go through the right environments. I've still got to be in the environment. And I keep coming back to AI may be able to give me the best training program in the world. I have still got to do that training program. I've got to be the one that gets up in the middle of the morning to do it and eat, and then decide that I can't have any sugar, or I can't have any alcohol, or I've got to go to bed at 8 o'clock because that's going to enable me to win. It's the human being element of that which is going to be the key. Why am I doing it? Why would I care? That will always be coming back to meaning. So you can have all of the stuff that AI can do, give you the best programs, the best processes, but now it's about putting those into practice on any given day.
That's the point, because I was at a talk earlier at one of the Soho houses, and it was someone who I believe will come on this podcast soon enough, and he was talking about a number of young people using ChatGPT as almost a friend, and as a bit of a psychologist in a way. So it gives the perception, this is kind of what I'm saying, the LLM gives the interpretation that it's human-esque. What you've just described is actually the human side to it. That's not part of the conversation. And whilst there's no value put onto what that human or human complementary element is, then it's a bit of a falsity to suggest that an AI and assistant is in any way going to have the type of results. I mean, give us an elaboration.
Yeah, well, I think that's, sorry, I was jumping in there because
Go for
I
it.
think that's definitely rising up. What we're seeing is this sort of, so I don't know what they're called, buddies or whatever they are, but they're not based on anything. You know, part of our human development process is, well, I know you, Graham, right? I need to get to know you. I need to know what motivates you, what drives you. But not, that's just step one, because that's just information about you. I also need to know about what skills you have, what strategies you have to put that out into the world. Yeah, it's those combinations of things. We just that's where we've just got this all wrong. We're actually, when we just do tests on somebody, and we're so good at that. Sorry, but I was laughing earlier on because I couldn't help thinking of the Monty Python sketch. You know, sorry if I've said it before, but was it the 100-meter race for those who lack a sense of direction? Yeah, and fundamentally they're all lined up, of course, and he fires the gun and they all run off in different direction. So the thing, it doesn't matter how fast you are unless you've got a sense of purpose and meaning. So it doesn't matter what information you've got unless it's directing towards something. So you have to have that in place, and that's what we're trying to get. That difference is fundamentally because when somebody feels really heard, and actually and you understand about what motivates or what drives them, you're now starting to listen to the narrative, which what Floyd does is about what is that narrative that you're developing here, and you can tune into that. That's where we have that sense of identity. So the science behind that is there's a guy called Dan McAdams, and anyone hasn't read his work, I'd go and read his work. It's just about identity, and Dan, sorry, Daniel, if I maybe not making good sense of it here, but basically it breaks into three sections. So you are an actor in the world, right? So that's how I know you as Graham. Right, you'll show me some sort of personality, and we can measure that through like Personality Big Five, for example. And then, but you're also an agent in the world, yeah. So that tends to form about 7 years old. You've got ambitions, you've got goals you want to achieve. There's some drives. So it doesn't matter whether I'm extroverted or introverted. What really now is starting to matter is actually, well, how am I driven? And so my extroversion, introversion might just be how I'm starting to grip the world to meet my needs and my motivations. That makes sense? And then the last part is actually, and I like to think that's the part that Floyd's work really delves into, is actually starting to create that narrative. That's you become an author. So, right, let's get this all together. So what is the story you're really trying to tell about yourself? And I think that's where we lose it. Now there's some good elements out there where I think people are starting to really address that. What's the story you're telling? What's your autobiographical self?
So we've been working on doing exactly that. So when you use our model at the moment, it will give you a really good overview of your personality using the big five, as Malcolm has gone through. Again, it's a very robust scientific psychometric. It will give you your cognitive load, so it'll tell me where I am in terms of my optimal performance, or whether I'm straying left and right of that particular line. But you can also then start to discuss what I want to do in the future based on my profile. It can give you great advice. It can also ask certain questions about, what you're doing. Have you got the right strategy? What values do you need? So you can now really interrogate it, but give it context. So what you're now doing is going, well, actually, that's true, but I've also spent 27 years doing this. I've been 15 years doing that. I have some of these skills. And then the great thing about the work we're doing with AI is it will adjust to that. It was now going to go, okay, I've got that. So when we were playing with it the other day and I said, look, I'm thinking about being an accountant, you kind of get
So
your strengths looking in a different direction here.
so describing intuition and instinct, which again, with the typical chat buddy, it's just a flow of information.
Completely, yeah.
So, well, as the rate limiting factor is effectively limited based around your question. So you're moving into the agentic domain
Yeah,
in part,
completely.
where it's insightful
Oh yeah, absolutely.
dialogue.
No,
Because
absolutely.
I can imagine, which was the profession you were suggesting?
Accountant. I can assure you, it almost stopped working. Going, I
Yeah,
don't think that's.
but-
You might as well have said, I don't think that's a good idea.
Because
Floyd," because it did. Yes.
any human that knows you would just smile and just say, okay.
It was almost, I think, one of the things that came with, are you working by yourself? And it was really interesting because you're not going to be in a firm doing accountancy. But the key thing behind it is that when we were interrogating it and going through and doing that, it's adjusting to that. But it's giving you some really good thoughts. And even though I think I know my Super North Star really well and clear, it started to bring up things that, have you thought about this as a strategy? Have you worked this out? Are you looking at that? It's the ability for it to work with you to ask those. But I'm still going to qualify some of those things. I'm still looking at what that actually means. I'm still going to make the decisions based on what I think, but that's the difference. It's where that's supporting you in what you're doing, giving you some thought process, but it's working for you based on you, not on, I think generically human beings do this. This is now becoming very specific for you. And that's where I think AI done well takes you to a different level.
Well, it becomes a capability.
Absolutely.
And to have a powerful capability aligned with what works for you.
But it also can support you here as well when you're not in sync. So for example, when I've done it and checked it over a number of days and weeks, and all of a sudden I'm into a fatigue area, doesn't mean that I can't work in fatigue for a long time, because I probably can. But if I'm in there for a couple of weeks, it just allows me to think, what am I doing that's taking me there? And I'll give you an example of this. When I was working with somebody, again, doing the same principles of what we're doing on, I noticed that they were out of sync for 3 or 4 days. And all I did was go straight back and, look, can you just tell me where you are? And actually they were having quite a torrid time, but you would never have gauged it from my interaction with him beforehand in any way. And even when I looked at some of the things he was saying, I could not have told that from the vocabulary, but the coach could. And what that enabled me to do was speak to him. He was going through quite a torrid time. We spoke it out. It allowed me to assist him, because again, that's the kind of elements you're going to get from this. It's just flagging things for you to think about. And it also then can bring up you coming back to, are you making sure you're looking after yourself? Are you making sure you're clear on your Super North Star? It's just enabling you to have those check places. But again, in a way that you'd never get in any other way, because normally you'd be dealing that with yourself, maybe with family members, maybe with friends. But you and I both know that a lot of people don't do that until they're way down the line. I think this is where again you can enhance things using this type of program.
Very positive for mental health.
Massively positive for
There's
mental health.
also going to be a huge risk with the generalized models, which we're already beginning to see some tragic circumstances and outcomes, because there's a lack of again, if you don't address these issues, then you won't be cognizant of the type of problems which are inevitable. And this is a huge counter to that, because it's addressing the human psychology. It's addressing the genuine elements of having that cognition of what a human is and its interaction with the wider world, which I think is important. I mean, you've seen that firsthand in a professional setting with players. I mean, do you want to give us an example?
Yeah, again, so from various perspectives, you've always often got those like the tough players who fundamentally will give you that persona that they'll just go through brick walls, but they're often the ones that are actually the problem, because actually they're just blocking it all out. So I've seen, so I obviously not going to name names, but I've seen that happen several times within high professional sport, where actually that tough-minded person just leads to absolute breakdown, because they're just living on that side of fatigue or burnout, and the only way they can deal with it is to keep applying the same force of toughness. It reminds me of I don't know if you've ever seen that clip with the car goes into the quay, the harbour, and they get a crane to pick the car out, but the crane falls into the harbour. So what do? They go and get a bigger crane to pick the bigger crane out, and actually to get the crane out of the harbour. That falls into the harbour. So what do? They go and get an even bigger crane. Now, that's what happens sometimes. You've got a tough mindset. You just try and hit it with the same tool all the time, and actually, but you don't want anybody to know, because that's about your persona and that's who I am. And then you've got the other ones that fundamentally just need that little bit of loving and caring. But it's a tough environment, right? So coaches don't give it. They go, come on, you just need to toughen up. They don't really fully understand that player. So what happens? They just get totally disengaged. I've seen that happen quite a few times. Players just fall out of love with the game, because actually nobody's really engaging with them. But I think through that system, because it's a dynamic system.
But that can cost millions.
Millions of pounds, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, to lose a player which may have a market value of 50 million and then suddenly gone.
But I used to battle against that all the time, actually. Sorry, I almost talk like a conveyor belt. You know, the assets. Like, sorry, that's probably being a bit harsh, but let's use that as an analogy. But yes, you're just trying to produce the same player through the same process. And I used to ask the questions, going, well, are we producing players because of the system or despite the system? Surely our job should really be to capture the person and make the best version of that person, rather than actually just keep producing the conveyor belt of a particular type of player, because that way is going to be better for business. Surely that means actually we've got players who fully understand themselves, fully aware, actually go out into that environment, know strategy, know how to deal with that environment more effectively. Then you're just going to up. So it sounds harsh, but if it's an asset, then you're going to up the asset.
It's mutually beneficial success.
Totally.
Success for the individual.
Completely.
And obviously then their family, success for the club, and apply that in the strictly business sense. A happy employee, a successful employee, a successful business where everyone comes up together and enjoys the benefits.
Completely. I'll give you a really good example here. Last week I had a really complex negotiation between some people at work, and
It wasn't me,
the best thing for me was to put their personalities through what I thought their personalities were through the Enlightened program. And what it allowed me to do is think, based on my personality, so it really understands me against these other individuals, what's the best way of engaging, what's the best way to do this. Now, even though I know them quite well, what it's given me is nuance. It's given me things that I just need to think about, which just allowed me to basically, it's pre-prepping. I need to pre-prep this before we get all together, so that I've managed to work out some of the issues which are definitely going to come from this meeting, which I did. And then of course the meeting goes really well within a very short space of time, probably one of the better meetings I've had, just based on all of a sudden now I can understand how to just adapt differently And in this context, it's probably one of the things we know is the most important is, as a coach, just so you're aware, one is of you, and very few of them are fully aware of what their biases are, what their personality is, how it's affecting different things because of different stresses and strains. Now you've got something to go, hey, just hang on a minute, look at where they are. This person's absolutely optimal performance. So you can probably go in there and really, really push the bounds. This person's in fatigue, or there's potentially burnout here. Remember, the personality, it's just giving you another, at a different level, when you start to look at it from a team perspective, great analytical. You would never get that from any other system. And the AI is doing that. It's taking all the heavy lifting, bringing it all together, and just going based on science, this evidence, this ability to realize how you need to connect and adapt. This is what I'm thinking.
So in this context, AI is more capturing the untapped potential of augmented insight,
Completely
applying that into the real world from a personal perspective, a professional perspective,
Completely.
and also very much an ethical perspective, because it's putting consideration from the human perspective whilst not replacing human, providing the guardrails and the insight, which is absolutely critical to having something
absolutely.
that works.
But it's still a human, but it's still me taking that information in that context, or the coach or anything. You've still got to deliver that. You can't deliver it as AI going, oh, by the way, I've read this, I think this is what you need to do, because that's not going to work. I need you now to convince me that from an authentic perspective, you've got that. Explain to me now how we're going to apply it. That's the transformation. And of course, you're only going to grow as a coach. So where's the additional element from AIs? Because I'm going to get better and better at this. So all of a sudden I'm realizing, yeah, I probably would do it that way. And it's just stating that's not going to work in this environment. You need to adapt it, be aware of this, and all of a sudden then we can capture better communication, better understanding, better influencing skills, better engagement. Well, that's always going to help the bottom line. Always.
And we're still learning it. I think we did Michael Jordan, actually. And we put Michael Jordan in early days and latter days. And actually, and it came out slightly different, but of course, what happened was actually there was a major trauma with his dad through that period of time. Of course, people are affected by major trauma. So it's moving in that direction, but that only helps the system when we have context and we can add context to it. That is the difference with the system we're developing. Not only is it telling you about who you are within the context of what you're trying to achieve, it's also layering on it context that we can put back into that system. So I can say, well, no, it's Graham, but Graham's this, and Graham's experienced in this, he's done this. Right, so use that personality and your experience of being Graham, yeah, actually it calculates that and works that out. So it's not just purely, well, you're categorized as this. Well, good luck with that.
Personalised AI.
It's personalizing it more and more. So we're trying to move it to much more that human side to understand. And we still think, you know, there's lots of space to go and developing that there. But that's really what it's doing. It's you call that agentic self. That's
especially when you add on, now we're going to add on the physical abilities. So we're going to be able to attach it to all your APIs physically. When we go even further and then look at the DNA side of it, then all of a sudden we're able to give you a complete, the aura, 2 minutes. It will allow us to adjust some of the elements. It allows it to pick all those things up and give us just give us more information. Look, based on this, your sleep's down, or your hydration, or there's something missing in what you're doing, or you're not training as much. Just be aware of that. I'm just an extra check for you on your journey, which I think is obviously some of the key things here. But I just think that connecting bit allows us to potentially even take our conversation here and go, right, let's have a look at the personalities on the big five of this three. Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses? What would you do to enhance this meeting going forward? It's just one of those wonderful things that gives us a bit more knowledge, allows me, certainly as a negotiator, I think, oh, actually, I might just need to do that slightly differently.
And I think the thing it's always missed from all those aspects. And it goes back to you just saying about that simple AI or physiological data. Physiological data around what? This is a human person we're talking about. So we're trying to build it from the human first and how the human psyche is working. And then you add the the data, the physiological data into it. Now that's how your mind works, right? It's sensing what's going on in the body. It's your anterior insular cortex. It's fundamentally it's tuning into the energy in the system. Then it's trying to relate that to some sort of motivation and goal that you actually have got. I mean, how can you take the psychology out of something like HRV? I mean, heart rate variability, it's because we're working as a system. So once we've got the system, then we add in the physical data into the system. It's encapsulating that as a much more holistic view. And I just think that is the future.
Well, it's an engineering problem, which is being honest about what the problem is in the first place.
And we spoke on the documentary that we're looking to do as well, and that is about being more human. That is about really looking at this and realizing our journey. Where can AI support us? I think to become even more human is a really good story, because I think it can.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a very good insight into this story, talking about the adventure of documentaries, and I know you've written a book which people should definitely look into as well. This journey is started the chapter 1, chapter 2, and there are many more chapters to come. And I think writing history on the fly, but doing so with a lot of thought, conviction, and passion is important, especially in the light of narratives which we know are somewhat lacking.
No, we have to also potentially enable some of your subscribers to have a look at what we're doing and maybe take a go themselves.
Excellent, brilliant. We'll put all the bits and bobs in the description. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you,
Floyd.
Pleasure.
And
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you.
lovely.